I press my palms against my navy silk dress, smoothing invisible wrinkles as I stand before the imposing double doors of the Oakmont Country Club. My heart pounds against my ribs like it's trying to warn me. Turn around, go home, save yourself. But I'm already here, my sensible heels already clicking against the marble entryway. My gift already wrapped in expensive paper that costs more than the bottle of scotch it contains. Miss? Your name? Asks the attendant, a young man with a too-tight bow tie who doesn't realize he's guarding the entrance to my personal purgatory. Tessa Reynolds. I reply, the name feeling strangely formal on my tongue. I'm Michael's daughter. His eyes flicker with recognition. Of course, Miss Reynolds. The celebration is in the grand ballroom. I nod and step inside, immediately enveloped by the familiar scent of money. Subtle cologne, fresh flowers, and polished wood. The sounds of 120 people laughing, clinking glasses, and engaging in carefully curated conversations echoes through the vaulted ceilings. Dad's 60th birthday celebration is exactly what he wanted. A display of wealth and influence wrapped in the guise of a family gathering. I spot him across the room, silver-haired and commanding, in his tailored suit, surrounded by colleagues who hang on his every word. He doesn't see me. He never does. Not right away. I've learned to exist in the periphery of his vision, a shadow daughter who shows up dutifully at these functions but never quite belongs. A server passes with champagne flutes balanced on a silver tray. I take one, grateful for something to hold, something to do with my hands. The bubbles tickle my nose as I take a small sip, scanning the room for a friendly face. Aunt Diane isn't here yet. Of course not. That would be too convenient. I drift toward the edges of the room, smiling politely at the familiar faces of Dad's friends who recognize me just enough to nod, but not enough to remember my name. It wasn't always this way. Before Melissa. Before the stepchildren who somehow fit better into the puzzle of his life than his own daughter ever did. Everyone, please find your table assignments at the entrance table, announces a voice I recognize immediately. Melissa, her blonde hair swept into an elegant updo, diamond earrings catching the light as she gestures toward the foyer. Dinner will be served in 20 minutes. My stepmother's eyes scan the room but conveniently skip over the corner where I stand. 15 years of practiced oversight. I make my way to the name tag table, arranged with Melissa's typical precision. Everything alphabetized, everything perfect. The Reynolds section is easy to find. Brandon, Kayla, Melissa, Michael. I flip through the elegant cards, each name written in Melissa's perfect calligraphy. My fingers freeze as I find mine. I stare at it, certain I'm hallucinating. But no, there it is, on the same heavy cardstock as the others. The same swirling script, but instead of Tessa Reynolds, it reads, The Letdown. The room seems to tilt around me. A rushing sound fills my ears, drowning out the party chatter. Across the room, I hear Melissa's distinctive laugh, a sound I've heard after countless small humiliations over the years. Suddenly, I'm 9 years old again, watching Dad pack his things, promising nothing would change. I'm 16, sitting alone at my debate championship, scanning the audience for a face that never appeared while he cheered at Brandon's mediocre football games. I'm 19, staring at my empty college fund, reading the withdrawal slip with Dad's signature while struggling to pay tuition as Instagram filled with photos of my step-siblings' European vacation. I'm every age I've ever been, standing in doorways, waiting for acknowledgement that never fully came. The name tag trembles between my fingers. I should leave. That's what they expect. For me to disappear quietly, to remove myself from their perfect family portrait. Aunt Diane's words from last week echo in my mind. Something feels off about this invitation, honey. You don't have to go. But I did go. And now I know why I was invited. My eyes lift from the name tag to see Dad finally noticing me from across the room. He raises his hand in a half wave, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Melissa turns, whispering something to Kayla, both of them watching me with poorly disguised anticipation. They're waiting for the tears, for the hasty exit, for the confirmation that I am exactly what the name tag declares, the family disappointment. A strange calm washes over me, cooling the initial shock and hurt. 15 years of subtle cruelty crystallized in 2 handwritten words. I place the name tag back on the table. Instead, I reach for a champagne glass from a nearby tray, my eyes never leaving the offensive card. The glass is cool against my palm, the stem delicate between my fingers. I tap it gently with my ring. Once. Twice. The soft clink carries, just as I intended. Nearby conversations pause. Heads turn toward the sound. One by one, voices hush as attention shifts to the woman standing alone at the name tag table with a raised glass. Dad's expression shifts from confusion to alarm. Melissa's smug smile falters. Brandon and Kayla exchange uncomfortable glances, shifting their weight from one foot to another as the room gradually falls silent. I take a single step forward. What would you do if your own family labeled you the letdown at a celebration? Would you quietly leave, or would you stand your ground? The glass in my hand catches the light, sending prisms dancing across the suddenly quiet room. I choose to stand. The first betrayal happened on a Tuesday. I remember because it was taco night, and the smell of seasoned beef filled our small apartment kitchen as Dad explained he was leaving. 9-year-old me sat at our scratched wooden table, my taco shell crumbling in my fingers as he spoke. "Nothing will change between us, Tess," he promised, his hand resting on mine. "You'll always be my little girl." I believed him. Children do. 3 months later, I met Melissa. She worked at Dad's thermal perfect blonde hair and gleaming white teeth standing in our once familiar living room that now smelled of unfamiliar perfume. Behind her stood Brandon and Kayla, eyeing me with the detached curiosity of tourists viewing an exotic animal at the zoo. "We're going to be a family," Dad announced, his arm around Melissa's waist. "Won't that be wonderful?" I nodded because that's what good daughters do. I colored welcome cards for my soon-to-be step-siblings. I helped Mom pack my things for my first weekend at Dad's new house. I tried to blend into the seams of this patchwork family. The second betrayal was a slow unveiling, like watching paint peel off a wall over years of neglect. "Dad, my debate championship is Thursday at 7. I told him during our Wednesday phone call, my voice trembling with 15-year-old anticipation. "I'm opening for the affirmative position." "That's great, honey," he said, distraction evident in his voice. "I'll try to make it." 3 days later, I scanned the auditorium audience between rounds, my heart sinking as I recognized the pattern. The empty seat next to Mom, the unanswered text messages, the familiar ache of disappointment settling into my chest. That same night, Brandon scored the winning touchdown at his football game. I know because the photos dominated Dad's Facebook page for weeks, his arms slung around Brandon's shoulders, Melissa beaming beside them, Kayla flashing victory signs. The caption, "Couldn't be prouder of my son tonight." My debate trophy collected dust on my mother's mantle. Dad never asked to see it. They assigned me to clean the bathrooms again. I complained to Mom at 16 after another weekend at Dad's house. Brandon and Kayla never have to do it. It's always me. Mom's mouth tightened as she folded laundry. "Did you say something to Michael about it?" I had. His response echoed in my head. "You're just more responsible, Tessa." It's a compliment, really. Responsible enough to scrub toilets, but not important enough to celebrate. The pattern crystallized with each passing month. When Kayla turned 16, Dad rented an entire restaurant. There was a professional photographer, custom decorations, and a cake that cost more than my entire wardrobe. 2 months later, my 16th birthday warranted a hurried dinner at Olive Garden, where Dad checked his phone throughout the meal and left early for an important client meeting. But nothing compared to the third betrayal, the one that left financial scars alongside the emotional ones. I was 19, halfway through sophomore year, sitting cross-legged on my dorm room bed when I clicked on my college fund account. The balance glared back at me. $422.17. Last month, it had been $18,422.17. There must be some mistake. I told the bank representative, my voice hollow. The withdrawal was authorized on the 7th of February by account custodian Michael Reynolds, she replied. The signature matches our records. The 7th of February, 3 days before Brandon got his new Audi, the car that appeared on Instagram with the caption, "Best Parents Ever." While I worked double shifts at the campus coffee shop and the local restaurant, my textbooks propped open during rare slow moments. Mom fought. She hired a lawyer, spent money she didn't have, trying to recover what Dad had taken. It was his name on the account too, her lawyer finally explained, defeat evident in his voice. Legally, he had access. Legally, perhaps? Morally? The question hung in the air between us, unanswered. I took extra courses each semester, worked through summers, and graduated in 3.5 years instead of 4. Meanwhile, Brandon and Kayla's social media documented their semester abroad in Europe, their spring breaks in Cabo, their lives unmarred by the weight of mounting student debt. Only Aunt Diane saw the truth, Dad's sister, with her penetrating gaze and unflinching honesty. "This isn't right, Michael," I overheard her saying during a rare family gathering. "You can't treat Tessa like she's an afterthought." "You're overthinking things again, Di," Dad replied, his voice carrying that familiar dismissive tone. "Tessa's fine. She's independent. Always has been. Independence born of necessity, not choice. A survival tactic misinterpreted as a personality trait. Melissa's methods were subtler, more insidious. The forgotten invitations to family events that I'd learn about through Facebook photos. The way she'd interrupt whenever I spoke to Dad. The backhanded compliments. "That dress actually looks nice on you, Tessa. Hide your shoulders." 15 years of paper cuts to the soul, none fatal on their own, but collectively hemorrhaging. "You're difficult to love," Melissa told me once, when we were briefly alone in her gleaming kitchen. "That's why Michael keeps his distance. You remind him too much of his mistakes." I became the family ghost present, but transparent. Relatives stopped calling after hearing Melissa's carefully crafted narratives about my attitude problems and ungrateful behavior. Holiday gatherings became exercises in strategic avoidance, with me volunteering for kitchen duty to escape the living room conversations that fell silent when I entered. So when Melissa personally called to insist I attend Dad's 60th birthday celebration, warning signals blared in my mind. "You have to come, Tessa," she said, her voice honeyed with artificial sweetness. "Your father would be so disappointed if his only daughter missed his milestone birthday." Aunt Diane called the next day. "Something feels off about this invitation, honey. Melissa's never pushed for you to attend anything before." Yet I went anyway. Dressed in navy silk, bearing an expensive gift, walking into the Oakmont Country Club with fragile hope that perhaps, finally, something had changed. Now, staring at the name tag with the letdown written in Melissa's perfect calligraphy, I understand that something had indeed changed. Me. I was no longer willing to accept the pattern. 15 years of betrayal crystallized in 2 handwritten words, and for the first time, I could see the complete picture with perfect clarity. Have you ever noticed a pattern of mistreatment that suddenly became crystal clear in one devastating moment? The room falls silent, sound evaporating like morning dew under a harsh sun. My champagne glass catches the light, sending crystalline reflections dancing across suddenly attentive faces. The background music some jazzy rendition of standards. Dad always pretends to appreciate a fades beneath the weight of anticipation. Dad takes 3 hurried steps toward me, his patent leather shoes clicking against marble with increasing urgency. His smile is strained, eyes darting between me and his confused guests. "Tessa, honey," he begins, voice pitched for public consumption. "Why don't we step outside for a moment?" Behind him, Melissa's crimson lips form urgent words as she leans toward Brandon. "Get her out of here," she hisses, not bothering to lower her voice enough. She's never had to be careful around me before. Why start now? Brandon shifts uncomfortably, caught between his mother's command and the room's collective gaze. He hesitates just long enough for me to sidestep Dad's approaching hand. "I'd like to propose a toast," I say, my voice steady and clear in a way I've never heard it before. The sound travels efficiently through the hushed room, bouncing off crystal chandeliers and returning stronger. To 60 years of Michael Reynolds. Dad's shoulders relax slightly. A practiced smile slides into place as he misreads the situation, assuming I've decided to play along after all. Several guests raise their glasses, relieved at what appears to be a return to scheduled programming. My father has always been concerned with appearances. I continue, each word measured and deliberate, with creating the perfect image, with being exactly how others perceive him. The relief in the room evaporates. Dad's smile freezes, then fractures at the edges. On the 14th of October, 2012, my college advisor called to inform me that my tuition payment had bounced. I was 19. I pause, letting the date land. When I checked my college fund account, I discovered it had been emptied 5 days earlier. $18,000, withdrawn by the account's co-signer, me father. A soft gasp comes from somewhere near the ice sculpture. Mrs. Harrington, I think. One of Dad's oldest clients. 3 days after that withdrawal, Brandon received a new Audi for his 25th birthday. My gaze finds my stepbrother, who has the decency to stare at his shoes. I worked 3 jobs to stay in school that semester. Night shifts at the campus library, weekends at a coffee shop, and evenings tutoring high school students. Melissa steps forward, her laugh brittle and forced. Tessa has always had a flair for drama, too much time in those theater classes. On the 8th of June, 2016, I continue as if she hadn't spoken. I graduated with honors. I have the photos of the empty seat reserved for my father. He was at Kayla's apartment warming party. I turned slightly. A lovely event, from what I saw on Instagram later. Dad moves again, this time more decisively. That's enough, Tessa. You're embarrassing yourself. No, Dad. For the first time in my life, I'm not embarrassing myself. I reach my clutch and remove the name tag, holding it up so the elegant calligraphy is visible. The letdown. This is what you allowed to be written about your daughter. This is what you and Melissa thought was appropriate for a father's 60th birthday celebration. The crowd's collective intake of breath is audible. Someone mutters, "Jesus Christ," from the back of the room. Tessa, you're clearly upset, Dad attempts, his authoritative boardroom voice failing him now. I'm not upset, I say, surprised to discover it's true. I'm simply done. A movement to my left catches my eye. Aunt Diane slips through the crowd to stand beside me, her hand briefly squeezing mine before dropping away. Her presence, the warm solidarity of it, makes my voice even stronger. For 15 years, I've watched you build a new family while systematically pushing me to the margins of your life. I've made excuses for missed birthdays, forgotten achievements, and empty promises. I convinced myself it wasn't deliberate, that you were just busy, just distracted, just anything but intentionally cruel. I scan the room, noting the subtle shifts in the crowd. Mr. Patel, Dad's golf partner, is nodding slightly. Mrs. Feldman looks directly at Melissa with newfound suspicion. Even Dad's longtime photographer has lowered his camera, unwilling to document this unscripted moment. But this, I hold up the name tag again, this took planning. This took deliberate cruelty. This took all 3 of you. Brandon starts to protest, but Kayla nudges him silent, both of them slinking back toward the nearest wall. I came here tonight out of some lingering sense of family obligation. Some hope that maybe, finally, I was being included in a genuine way. My voice doesn't waver, doesn't crack. Each word emerges clear and precise, carrying the weight of accumulated truth. Instead, I found confirmation of what I've suspected for years, that I'm not a you. I'm an inconvenience, a reminder of a life you'd rather forget. Dad's face has lost its rehearsed composure. His authority in the room, the carefully cultivated gravitas he's built over decades, visibly diminishes with each word I speak. Melissa attempts another laugh, a well-practiced social tool that's served her for years, but it falls utterly flat in the weighted silence. This isn't a performance for sympathy, I continue. It's not an emotional outburst or an attempt at revenge. It's simply the truth, spoken aloud after 15 years of silence. I turn slightly, deliberately meeting the eyes of people who've known me since childhood. People who've watched from the sidelines as I was gradually erased from family photographs, conversations, and considerations. To those of you who suspected something wasn't right, All these years, thank you for your concern, however quietly expressed. To those who were complicit, I hope you reflect on the kind of family dynamics you've enabled. I raise my glass one final time, the champagne gleaming under the chandelier lights. I'd like to toast to the last time you will ever see me, to the end of pretending, to the beginning of a life unburdened by the weight of your disappointment. I don't drink. Instead, I gently place the full glass on the nearest tableau, no dramatic smashing, no wine thrown in faces, just a quiet, deliberate placement. The soft clink as glass meets marble punctuates my final statement more effectively than any shouted words could. With the same measured calm, I place the letdown name tag beside the glass. A museum piece. Evidence. I walk toward the exit, back straight, pace unhurried. No tears. No rushing. Just the steady click of my sensible heels against marble, creating a rhythm that feels like freedom. Behind me, the vacuum of stunned silence persists. Not a single voice rises to break it, not even Dad's. In his own house, surrounded by his carefully cultivated society, he has nothing to say that could possibly undo what has just occurred. As the heavy double doors close behind me, I realize I'm smiling. Not from vindication or revenge, but from the simple, profound relief of finally being honest. For the first time in 15 years, I'm not trying to be what Michael Reynolds wants in a daughter. I'm simply being Tessa. The heavy door clicks shut behind me with finality. The country club's elegant exterior looms at my back as I stand motionless in the parking lot, breathing in the crisp evening air. My hands should be shaking, my heart should be racing. Instead, a strange calm washes over me like a warm tide. Inside, chaos erupts. Even through the thick wooden doors, I hear the swell of voices, a symphony of confusion, shock, and judgment rising to the vaulted ceilings. I imagine Melissa's face, that practiced smile cracking, as she flutters from guest to guest. She's always been dramatic, never could handle family gatherings. We've tried everything with her. My car feels like a sanctuary. I slide into the driver's seat, place my purse carefully beside me, and breathe. For 15 years, I've been holding my breath at these gatherings, measuring each word, calculating each smile. The exhaustion of performance finally lifts from my shoulders. I don't turn on the ignition immediately. Instead, I watch the country club entrance. Within 20 minutes, guests begin trickling out, couples with tight smiles and hushed conversations, checking watches though the party should have lasted 3 more hours. Dad's celebration is collapsing like a souffle punctured too soon. Melissa must be frantic. The thought brings no joy, just a quiet acknowledgement of consequence. My phone begins its assault before I reach the highway. It buzzes relentlessly against the passenger seat where I've tossed it. At a red light, I glance at the screen. 4 missed calls from Dad already, 2 from Melissa, 1 from Brandon. The text notifications stack like falling dominoes. From Dad, 8:42 p.m. Call me immediately. We need to discuss your behavior. From Dad, 8:55 p.m. You've embarrassed yourself in this family. Pick up the phone, Tessa. From Dad, 9:17 p.m. Your mother put you up to this, didn't she? From Dad, 9:34 p.m. Please call me back. We can fix this. The progression from command to plea would have pulled me back once. I would have answered, explained myself, apologized for causing a scene, the familiar dance steps of our dysfunctional waltz. Not tonight. Melissa's contribution arrives as I'm unlocking my apartment door. Your father built everything you have. This petty stunt might damage his business relationships. Is that what you wanted? To hurt the whole family because you felt slighted? I read it twice, noting how she frames Dad's reputation as the whole family, while my experience remains a mere slight. The message lands differently now. Like examining a painting I've restored, I see the subtle brushstrokes of manipulation that were always there beneath the varnish of concern. Brandon texts next. That was intense. You okay? Then Kayla. You could have just told Mom the name tag bothered you, instead of making Dad's birthday about yourself. I place my phone on the kitchen counter, switch it to Do Not Disturb, and pour myself a glass of water. The silence of my apartment embraces me. For the first time before a family event, I sleep deeply, dreamlessly, without the familiar knot of anxiety twisting in my stomach. Morning brings a fresh barrage. I document each message methodically in a notebook, noting the time, sender, and content. The pattern emerges clearly on paper. Dad's messages swinging between authority and desperation, Melissa's veiled threats about family reputation, the step-siblings' awkward attempts to minimize what happened. More telling are the family-wide communications. Aunt Diane forwards me the email Dad sent to extended family at 6:14 a.m. "We're concerned about Tessa. She had what appeared to be a breakdown at my birthday celebration last night. Melissa and I believe work stress has been taking a toll, and we're consulting with a family therapist about how to best support her during this difficult time. We appreciate your discretion as we handle this private family matter." I print the email, underline key phrases, and add it to my documentation folder. The narrative control is precise, transforming my clarity into confusion, my boundary into breakdown. My phone rings with an unfamiliar number around noon. I let it go to voicemail, then listen with surprise to hear Martin Geller, Dad's golf partner of 20 years and his attorney for even longer. "Tessa, it's Martin. I was at the party last night. I'm calling to say, well, you showed remarkable composure. I've known your father a long time, but what I witnessed. Please call if you need anything. And I mean anything." By afternoon, Aunt Diane reports that 3 couples have quietly asked her for my contact information. The country club manager called Dad about his membership renewal, supposedly routine but suspiciously timed. The foundation board, where Melissa chairs the social committee, is suddenly reviewing leadership rotation schedules. The whispers have begun, and whispers are the one thing Melissa has never learned to control. For 7 days, I maintain my silence. I go to work, restore a damaged landscape painting, have dinner with friends who know nothing of family drama. I sleep well. I breathe easily. On the 8th day, I craft a single email to my father. "Dad, I am open to rebuilding our relationship under the following conditions. 1. We meet with a family therapist of my choosing for a minimum of 6 sessions. 2. You acknowledge without qualification the pattern of favoritism and exclusion that has defined our relationship since your remarriage. 3. Our communication remains between us, without Melissa's management or interpretation. I require your response within 2 weeks. After that, I will consider your silence a decision. Tessa." I press send, then close my laptop. The antique clock on my mantel ticks steep, marking time that now moves at my pace, not theirs. I fix a cup of tea and settle into my reading chair, preparing for the inevitable backlash to my first real boundary. Strange how the hardest walls to build are the ones that protect us from those who should have sheltered us from the start. I grip my phone tighter as the text message flashes on the screen. "Mom called. Dad's having chest pains. Please call." Melissa's 3rd attempt this week to breach my carefully constructed walls, her escalation tactics becoming increasingly desperate. 3 days ago, it was my father appearing at the museum where I work, his imposing figure drawing stares as he cornered me between a Degas restoration and the staff break room. Yesterday, it was the concerned family friend, Martha, who just happened to be at my favorite coffee shop, ready with rehearsed lines about forgiveness and second chances. I delete the message without responding. The supposed health scare is textbook manipulation. I've documented each pattern in my therapy journal. Michael Reynolds hasn't had so much as a blood pressure issue in his 60 years. I check my watch, my grandmother's vintage Omega, the one possession my father couldn't control, and take a steadying breath. 20 minutes until the meeting I finally agreed to after 6 weeks of their relentless pursuit, on my terms, not theirs. The cafe I've chosen sits across from the public library, its wide windows and constant flow of patrons ensuring no scene can erupt without witnesses. I arrive early to secure the corner table back to the wall, clear view of both entrances. Rachel, my colleague from the museum's restoration department, settles 2 tables away with her laptop, close enough to intervene if needed, distant enough to provide privacy. "You've got this," she says, squeezing my shoulder before taking her position. At precisely 3 p.m., they arrive, me, father, and Melissa, overdressed for a casual coffee shop, in tailored wool and cashmere. Michael's silver hair is freshly cut, his expression practiced into concerned fatherhood. Melissa's diamond earrings catch the light as she scans the room, her smile faltering when she spots me already seated, composed, a manila folder placed precisely before me. "Tessa," my father says, leaning in for a hug I don't reciprocate. "You look well." They settle awkwardly into the mismatched vintage chairs, Melissa visibly recoiling from a water ring on the wooden table. This isn't their country club. This isn't their controlled environment. The discomfort shows in their posture, in their darting glances at neighboring tables where college students tap on laptops and young mothers wrangle toddlers. "We've been so worried," Melissa begins, her voice dropping into the concerned register I've heard her practice on phone calls with her friends. "This distance isn't healthy for any of us." My father clears his throat, hands clasped on the table he's boardroom pose. "Family obligations go both ways, Tessa. Whatever. This understanding occurred at my birthday. Surely we can move past it like adults." I remain silent, watching his delivery, noting how his eyes flick to Melissa for approval after each carefully crafted sentence. "We wanted to talk about how we can help you through this difficult time," he continues. "There's that apartment complex you were looking at near the museum. We could help with the down payment." Money. Always his solution. The same solution he tried when he emptied my college fund for Brandon's car. The same solution he offered when I graduated with honors and no family in attendance. Melissa leans forward, a tissue appearing magically in her manicured hand. "I know we've had our differences," she says, her eyes suddenly glistening with well-timed tears. "But you're still family. You'll always be family. And family matters, Tessa." My father's voice hardens slightly, not just emotionally, but practically. Connections, inheritance, the firm's client network, these aren't small considerations for your future. The threat lies just beneath the surface. Remember what you stand to lose. Without speaking, I open the manila folder, removing its contents with deliberate care. First, the college fund withdrawal slip with my father's signature, preserved in a plastic sleeve. Next, a printed email chain documenting Melissa's instructions to exclude me from the family Christmas card. Third, a transcript of Melissa's voicemail to my mother attempting to drive a wedge between us. Finally, I withdraw the name tag, still in its pristine sleeve, the elegant calligraphy spelling "the letdown" visible to everyone at our table. "What is this?" my father demands, his business voice emerging. "Documentation," I answer, my voice steadier than I feel. 15 years of it. "And this," I slide forward a sealed letter on my therapist's letterhead, identifying details carefully redacted, "is a professional assessment of the family dynamics at play." Melissa's tears vanish. "Are you recording this? Is this some kind of setup?" "I'm protecting myself," I say, placing my phone visibly on the table, which I've learned is necessary. My father's mask slips then, his jaw tightening as control visibly evaporates. "This is ridiculous. We came here to reconcile, not to be ambushed with." "With evidence," I interrupt, surprising myself with my composure. "I'm not here to argue. I'm here to establish terms for any future contact." Melissa leans toward my father, whispering what she thinks I can't hear. "I told you she'd make this impossible." Classic victim complex. The phone catches every syllable. "This meeting has confirmed everything I said at the party," I say quietly, gathering my evidence back into the folder. I wish it hadn't. As I prepare to stand, my father makes one final grasp for control. "You can't just erase 30 years of family, Tessa. You can't just walk away." I pause, folder in hand, and meet his gaze directly. "I'm not erasing anything, I'm simply stopping the damage from continuing." The words land with physical force. I see it in the way they both recoil, in the dawning realization spreading across their faces. For the first time, they understand I mean it. This isn't negotiation. This isn't a plea for attention or a bargaining chip for more affection. This is goodbye unless fundamental change occurs. I stand, my chair scraping against the wooden floor. Rachel catches my eye from her table, ready to follow. As I walk away, I leave them frozen in the booth, staring at each other, roles permanently reversed. The power has shifted, and I don't look back. I trace my finger along the edge of the charcoal sketch's solitary tree, bending against an invisible wind that now hangs in my living room. Sunlight spills through windows unobstructed by heavy drapes, casting honeyed rectangles across hardwood floors I selected myself. My apartment isn't grand like the Reynolds estate, but every item here tells a story I chose, not one forced upon me. Almost ready? Mom calls from the kitchen, where the rich aroma of her signature rosemary bread mingles with something savory Aunt Diane is stirring. Just finishing these, I answer, pressing the final adhesive strip onto the back of a handwritten card. 1 year. 12 months since I walked away from the country club, my champagne glass abandoned alongside that damning name tag. The anxiety that once coiled around my ribs before family gatherings has dissolved, replaced by a gentle flutter of anticipation. On my coffee table sits my therapy journal, its edges softened by weekly use. Dr. Martinez had suggested documenting not just negative patterns, but moments of growth. Last week's entry reads, "Set boundary with work project without apologizing. Felt strong, not guilty." Small victories, but they accumulate like brushstrokes, forming a new self-portrait. I glance at the photo wall opposite my sofa faces of people who actually see me. Sarah and Marcus, college friends I'd gradually withdrawn from during those tense family years, now back in my life after genuine reconnection. Mom and Aunt Diane at my museum's conservation exhibit opening, beaming with unmanufactured pride. Even Elena, my mother's prickly sister who sends inappropriate birthday gifts but who called immediately after hearing about the incident, saying simply, "About time, honey." The holidays had been the true test. For years, I'd endured Melissa's perfectly orchestrated Christmas celebrations, where gift opening became a performance art, and my presence inevitably missed the mark. This year, I'd hosted a winter solstice dinner instead takeout Chinese food, mismatched plates, and absolutely no color-coordinated wrapping paper. The authentic laughter that filled this room that night had been worth every tradition abandoned. On my bedside table sits Dad's letter. Not an email, not a textactual stationery with his law firm's embossed header, now repurposed for personal correspondence. "I failed you," it begins, followed by 3 pages that never once mention Melissa's name. It arrived 2 months ago. I've read it exactly once. The doorbell chimes, and I move toward it with steady steps, no longer dreading who might be on the other side. "Hey," Brandon says, shifting awkwardly in the hallway, a bottle of wine in one hand and a small gift bag in the other. "I brought that Syra you mentioned last time." His presence here still surprises me. Of all people, my stepbrother was the one who reached out after 3 months of silence, meeting me for coffee without his mother's knowledge. "What she did was cruel," he'd said simply. "And I've been complicit for too long. We're building something tentative but real, a relationship defined by choice rather than circumstance." In the kitchen, Mom and Aunt Diane work in comfortable tandem, their shared history of navigating Michael Reynolds visible in their shorthand communication. Diane catches my eye and winks, no longer needing to disguise her loyalty. As guests begin to arrive, I place my handcrafted cards at each setting. Not name tags, identity markers. Each bears a word I've chosen deliberately, the compassionate for Mom, the truth teller for Diane, the evolving for Brandon. The last card I hold a moment longer, tracing my own handwriting. The resilient. I pin it to my sweater, a declaration and a promise. Reconciliation with Dad may come someday, on my terms, when and if it serves my well-being. Forgiveness and renewed relationship aren't the same thing, a distinction I'm still learning to navigate. The apartment fills with voices, genuine laughter cascading through rooms that hold no ghosts. Family, I've discovered, isn't inherited, it's cultivated, chosen, and earned through consistent care. As I move toward the gathering, I feel the rightness of this truth settling into my bones.